What's up, everybody? South Carolina spends big to keep their star quarterback in Columbia in 2025. Well, other schools follow suit. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, we got to dive right into it. The big news coming out the last couple of days since last week talked to you guys. LaNorris Sellers is going to remain at South Carolina. Now, a lot of people wondering, well, yeah, where was he going? He was a dynamic redshirt freshman this year in Columbia. Why would he leave a good thing? Well, in this day and age of the NIL world, players want to be compensated. And when you're a really good player, you need to be compensated, and credit South Carolina for stepping up to the bat. LaNorris Sellers signing a new NIL deal with the program's collective, the Garnet Trust, and that confirms he will stay in Columbia and not enter the transfer portal. Details initially were not revealed, but South Carolina insider, 24/7 Sports, friend of the show, Brad Crawford, said it was a record-setting deal for a Gamecock player. He said he was told personally LaNorris Sellers' NIL deal was record-setting for a South Carolina player. Of course, obviously Dylan Stewart signed a big deal to remain there, the dynamic freshman defensive end. So, LaNorris Sellers sounds like was a little bit more than that. And if you're listening to a couple of reports out there, Brett Crawford even confirmed it, said multiple SEC schools were in pursuit of him. And this confirms what we had heard last week, that Auburn was one of the schools maybe, sniffing around on potentially making an offer for LaNorris Sellers. But again, this is where it gets kind of sticky. He never entered the NCAA transfer portal. So when you start getting into the, tampering, well, what is tampering? Did Hugh Freeze himself text LaNorris Sellers and say, hey, I got an NIL deal for you? No. There's all the back channels, right? There's people who maybe work for the Auburn, or people who are part of the Auburn collective, maybe reached out to LaNorris Sellers' representative, agent, whatever it is, and said, hey, here's what we're willing to offer you. You can do that. That's not illegal. What's illegal is the schools themselves, but there's no rule as far as the collective reaching out to a certain player's representative. Again, you're not reaching out to the player themselves. So this is where it gets just really kind of gray territory. But the good news is for South Carolina fans, LaNorris Sellers will be back next year. He was outstanding this past year, played 11 games, led the Gamecocks to a 9-3 record, and they were heading to the Citrus Bowl. He was named the SEC Freshman of the Year, completed close to 65% of his passes for 2,200 yards, 17 touchdowns, just 7 interceptions, and of course the rushing dynamic, over 650 rushing yards and 7 scores on the ground. But, look, South Carolina, they're on a 6-game win streak. They're red hot. A lot of people thought, maybe they should have deserved to be in the conversation for the college football playoff. And of course, this comes on the heels of them bringing in their future potential star. Ohio State transfer quarterback Aaron Noland just committed to transfer to South Carolina this week. So he was a former top 60 prospect, signed with Ohio State last year. And, the Buckeyes loading up in that quarterback room. He was looking for greener pastures, and now he gets to come sit behind LaNorris Sellers and do his thing, be the future of quarterback spot there for South Carolina. But, when you start to talk about deals that are being thrown around here, CBS Sports reported that Tulane quarterback Darian Mensah got an NIL deal with Duke that was record-setting at $8 million over the next 2 seasons. Now, people are saying, well, look, the Duke quarterback is getting $8 million. What are other people getting? Again, Sellers' deal was not disclosed, but his deal with the Gamecocks, according to reports, exceeded the $1.5 million agreement that they had with Dylan Stewart. So, again, look, if you're a South Carolina fan, you'd be super excited about it. You get to retain your star. Mike Shulu takes over as the OC very complimentary this offseason of LaNorris Sellers. And like we said, he won just about every award out there. And if you want to get in some early Heisman odds, I saw a couple sports books putting out there that, Arch Manning is kind of the overwhelming favorite. Garrett Nussmeier from LSU was up there, but LaNorris Sellers on the top 10 list of a lot of the preseason or very early preseason 2025 Heisman Award watch list. So again, if you're a South Carolina fan, be super excited. LaNorris Sellers sticking around, and you're going to be in the conversation to be potentially an SEC champ next year, and potentially, obviously, I think expectations of Columbia should be South Carolina as a playoff team next year because of the dynamic quarterback that you bring back. All right, a few other tidbits here in our first segment of the show. Other big news we hadn't touched on. The news did come out that Carson Beck, Georgia, announced on Monday that he tore his UCL in his right elbow and underwent surgery in Los Angeles. A full recovery is expected, but the school said Beck should be able to resume throwing by spring of 2025. So what does that mean? It means what we kind of thought, that Georgia throughout this playoff is going to be without Carson Beck. They're going to have to turn to Gunner Stockton for the entirety of the run. There were some reports that, he's going to miss the Sugar Bowl, but maybe he could be back after that. No, he's done. Carson Beck moves on, and everybody expects, going to head to the NFL draft, go start preparing for all that stuff. And there is technicality. I mean, he could return to Georgia as QB1 next year, but again, he's considered among the top quarterbacks in this draft with Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Jalen Milroe. So we expect he's going to go pro. But look, Gunner Stockton, I go back to the quote that Kirby Smart had with us just 2 weeks ago when he was on the conference call for the Sugar Bowl. He said, Gunner Stockton, the only thing he's lacking is big game experience. He's got everything else. He's got all the skills. He's got the big arm. He's got mobility. He's got accuracy. He's got everything. He just needs to get into games. And he got into the SEC championship game, played that whole second half against Texas, who's one of the top defenses in the country, and did enough to get the win and win the SEC championship game. But it's a tough end to Carson Beck's career because a lot of people thought, this was the guy, that this guy was going to be, bigger arm talent and way more talented than the Stetson Bennett's and guys that they've had in Georgia in recent years. But, tough end to his career. But the legacy of Gunner Stockton could get started very quickly here with an opportunity to win some playoff games and perhaps win another national championship. And for Georgia, that would be potentially 3 and 4 years if they can get it done. And that would be historic. All right, a few other things here. Bowl games to watch today. We got 4 SEC teams in action, depending on what time you're listening to this. 11 a.m. Central on ESPN will be 6-6 Oklahoma against 9-3 Navy in the Armed Forces Bowl. Oklahoma at about a 2.5-point favorite on FanDuel. They wrap up their first year in the SEC with a 26 consecutive bowl appearance. The only longer active streak is Georgia with 28. And the Sooners, they got to win this one to avoid their second losing record in Brent Venables' first 3 seasons. Now, Michael Hawkins expected to get to start at quarterback, started 3 games for them this year, and true freshman getting an opportunity to show what he could do. So we'll see. But again, Oklahoma, the slight favorite over 9-win Navy. At 2:30 Central on ESPN, it'll be 7-5 Georgia Tech. Again, 6-6 Vanderbilt in the Birmingham Bowl. Georgia Tech sitting about a 3-point favorite at FanDuel. And look, Clark Lee talked about it this week. He said these two programs are kind of mirror images of each other this year. Diego Pavia said we've upset some people. They've upset some people. We've had some close losses. He said, I think this is a perfect matchup for us. But the Commodores playing in their 10th bowl game, seeking their first postseason win since that 2013 win over Houston in the Birmingham Bowl. And Diego Pavia, all signs point to him getting eligibility for a 5th season next year. We'll see what ultimately happens with that. But he was the SEC Newcomer of the Year, tops all Power 4 quarterbacks with 716 rushing yards and 2,100 career yards on the ground, tops among active quarterbacks. So should be fun to see the former A&M quarterback versus the Vanderbilt quarterback in Vandy versus Texas Tech. Haynes King doing his thing over there. At 6 p.m. Central on ESPN, will be 8-4 Texas Tech versus 6-6 Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl. Tech just about a 1.5-point favorite, so Arkansas is the underdog here, but they can end Coach Sam Pittman's 5th year with a winning record with a win. And Razorbacks obviously had some big wins throughout this year, some tough losses as well. But a nice change of pace from their 4-8 they went a year ago. Arkansas will be without a couple of key players who opted out for the start of the NFL draft, including wide receiver Andrew Armstrong, defensive lineman Eric Gregory, Landon Jackson, and the big hit running back Jaquindon Jackson. Sam Pittman still has his quarterback Taylon Green, who ran for 7 touchdowns, threw for 13 more. So this will be the Taylon Green show to me. He's got to show up and show out for Arkansas to get a win in that one. And then later tonight, 9:30 Central on ESPN, will be 6-6 USC against 8-4 Texas A&M in the Las Vegas Bowl. Of course, both teams had higher expectations for this year, but A&M 8-4 and kind of dwindled down the stretch of the season. They will be without several D linemen, including Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, and wide receiver Moose Muhammad, who opted to prepare for the NFL draft. Now, redshirt freshman dual threat quarterback Marcel Reed, he took over as the starter midseason and never looked back. This will be an interesting one. I think this is advantage A&M's offense against USC's defense, but this will be A&M's farthest trip west since they opened the 2017 season at UCLA, a game that they lost. So will be fun to see this one. But again, your quadruple header today with 4 SEC teams all in action, and they're all back to back to back to back. There's no overlapping here, so you can watch all 4 SEC teams in action throughout the day today. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC. We'll get you caught up with the latest happening in the transfer portal. All that coming your way here in just a second. But first, I want to remind you about our friends over at Rocket Money. Look, did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? It definitely has helped us. We've had a few subscriptions that you may not even realize that you're paying for, and Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and help lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. You need to go check them out. Again, go cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Just go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends over at the Texas Bowl. Look, time is running out. We are getting so much closer. The 2024 Kinder's Texas Bowl is just days away on New Year's Eve, 2:30 Central at NRG Stadium in Houston, and we don't want you to miss it. It'll be the Baylor Bears taking on the LSU Tigers. Like we said, tickets selling fast for this Texas-sized matchup. I know LSU and Baylor both sold out their allotments, but still plenty of tickets in the stadium available. What more could you ask for to close out an unforgettable year like 2024? If you're ready for football and fireworks, head to kinderstexasbowl.com right now. That's KINDERS, texasbowl.com for tickets, suites, group opportunities, concert information. Seriously, go there right now. Tickets are almost gone. Don't miss this. Visit kinderstexasbowl.com right now. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. So we head into the weekend. We'll be back with you guys on Monday, recapping all the bowl action and getting you set for all the latest news in the transfer portal. And speaking of the transfer portal, we got to jump into that because we had a lot of movement the last couple of days. Over at Auburn, Eric Singleton, standout wide receiver from Georgia Tech, he made his decision official on Monday, announcing the sophomore receiver will transfer to Auburn to go play for Hugh Freeze and company. That's a big-time addition for Jackson Arnold, the quarterback, alongside Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, all those great freshmen that'll be heading into their sophomore seasons at Auburn. Singleton is set to go into his 3rd year in college and looking for his 3rd straight 700-yard season. He totaled 714 receiving yards with 6 touchdowns as a freshman, and then this year 750 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. Of course, Georgia Tech always known more for their running game. This year they had a lot of rushing yards with their running back and quarterback. So Singleton going to enter a Hugh Freeze offense that wants to air it out a lot. They want to throw it down the field. And so big get there for Hugh Freeze and company. And according to reports, took a good bit of money in an NIL deal to get him. But On3 Sports ranked him as the number 2 overall player in the portal. So a big get for Hugh Freeze and Auburn. And more on Auburn, they are reportedly set to waive or say goodbye to offensive lineman Percy Lewis after just 1 year of bringing him in. He is reportedly entering the transfer portal, so he'll be heading back out. So Percy Lewis on the move. Also over at Auburn, Keontae Scott, one of their defensive backs for the past 3 seasons. He is reportedly entering the transfer portal. Production fell off this year and a drop in playing time as well. So I have to wonder if the different defensive units and different DCs and changing personnel and all that kind of led to that. But Keontae Scott is on the move. Over at Arkansas, they were able to land Courtney Crutchfield in the transfer portal. On Christmas Day, Arkansas confirmed he had signed with Sam Pittman and the Razorbacks in the transfer portal. Started his career at Mizzou and was one of the best players coming out of the state of Arkansas in 2024. And now he ends up in back home in Arkansas with the Razorbacks. But a lot of reports of, was there tampering on Arkansas trying to get him out of Mizzou or whatever. But nonetheless, it's so funny. We talk about recruiting and stuff. You always want to stay on a kid's radar. And in these recruiting battles, you have to wonder, like, if you finish number 2 in a recruiting battle and you lose a kid, keep an eye on that, because a year later, if the kid isn't happy with who he picked, who won his recruitment, that number 2 option could come back into play. We've seen it a lot here since this transfer portal has become more and more prominent, of kids winding back up at the school that we initially thought they were going to go to. And that's a school who finished number 2 or number 3 on their recruiting battle. So anyway, Courtney Crutchfield back in the state of Arkansas, going to play for the Razorbacks. A few other notes here in Arkansas. Kavion Broussard is transferring to Arkansas to help that offensive line depth. He's 6'6", 310 pounds from Louisiana, was part of Ole Miss's 2024 signing class. So the Ole Miss Rebel on the move over to Arkansas. And also Omega Blake, former Charlotte transfer who started his career at South Carolina. He is heading to Arkansas as well. So Sam Pittman being very aggressive in the transfer portal, adding a bunch of pieces. We mentioned South Carolina there. Speaking of South Carolina, they picked up, in addition to their secondary, out of the MAC, as they picked up defensive back Myles Norwood. He was from St. Louis, transferred from Ball State, and according to On 3 Sports, he was down to Kentucky and South Carolina and chose South Carolina. Had 38 tackles, 22 of them solo, 2 tackles for a loss, 10 pass breakups, and a fumble recovery last. So big addition there for South Carolina. And they also picked up former Alabama and Florida State linebacker Sean Murphy as well. He was a big-time prospect when he signed with Alabama. He was the number 3 player in the state of Virginia back in 2022. And he'll have 2 years of eligibility remaining. And Sean Murphy, linebacker, heading to South Carolina. We'll keep an eye on him, see what he does. Over at Mississippi State, they picked up a running back in the transfer portal from Fluff Bothwell, a running back from South Alabama, and heads to Starkville after 1 season at South Alabama. Will have 3 full seasons of eligibility remaining. He was not on the radar of Power 4 programs coming out of high school. Was a 3-star, number 89 player in the state, but appeared in 12 games this year, rushed for 832 yards, 13 touchdowns, also 13 catches. So watch Fluff Bothwell in the backfield for Mississippi State coming up next season. Over at Texas A&M, Samuel Mpemba leaving Georgia to find more playing time. Edge rusher committing to Texas A&M this week, who's a former 5-star recruit, one of the big pickups for Georgia's 2023 recruiting class. He will have 3 years of eligibility remaining, and in his 2 seasons there at Georgia, had 6 tackles, played in 15 total games. So big-time pickup there for A&M. They also have been busy in the portal picking up Florida defensive end TJ Searcy, who in his freshman year was named to the freshman All-SEC team with 26 tackles and a forced fumble. So that's a big addition there for Mike Elko and company. Over at Ole Miss, Micah Pettis, offensive lineman, announcing he has committed to transfer to Florida State, 6'7", 350-pounder. So he will have 1 year of eligibility remaining. He is on the way to Florida State. He'll play Alabama in the opener down there in the ACC. Over at Oklahoma, they continue to rebuild their roster through the transfer portal. And they added another quarterback. We know that they got the Washington State kid coming down, but they picked up a former Southern Conference Player of the Year in the FCS ranks, Western Carolina transfer Cole Gonzalez will be heading to Oklahoma. He's the son of Florida wide receivers coach Billy Gonzalez. And heads to the FBS after 3 seasons at Western Carolina. So John Mateer expected to be the starter there. They also bring back Michael Hawkins, who was a true freshman this year, but they're just trying to add to that quarterback room and help the depth there. So look for quarterback Cole Gonzalez there over at Oklahoma. Over at Florida, wide receiver Marcus Burke looks to be moving on to continue his college career elsewhere. Pete Nako is reporting this week that Burke has officially entered into the transfer portal, so we will keep an eye and see where he ends up. Also, some reports that Florida is believed to be the landing spot for former Texas wide receiver Jonte Cook, former 5-star recruit out of the state of Texas. Came with big expectations back in the 2023 recruiting class, but parted ways with the Longhorns mid-season. Steve Sarkisian confirmed that back on November 7th, that they had parted ways, and a lot of reports that Jonte Cook could end up a Florida Gator catching passes from DJ Lagway. That would be a big-time pickup for them. Over to Alabama, their former running back Justice Haynes announced he is heading to Michigan, so he will continue his career up there. Former 5-star recruit, number 2 player from the state of Georgia, back in the class of 2023. Played in 2 seasons at Alabama, played in 25 games, and productive back. But Justice Haynes moving on, heading to the Big Ten to go play for Michigan. Over at Tennessee, a couple of portal names yesterday. Holden Stays, tight end, announcing he will enter the transfer portal. He'll have 1 season of eligibility remaining. Started his career at Notre Dame before transferring to Tennessee last year. Miles Kitzelman ended up having a bigger role this year at that tight end spot. Also, backup quarterback Gaston Moore entering the transfer portal. We'll see where he ends up over there at Tennessee as he enters the portal. But of course, Nico Iamaleava will return for his 3rd season in Knoxville, and we'll see who ends up being his backup. And there you have it. You're caught up with all the latest going on in the transfer portal. More to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. I want to remind you guys, today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can finish the year strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Plenty of opportunities and ways to get wins. Of course, you can bet on prop bets, which player will score a touchdown, how many points will each team score, and of course, you got the lines, the overs, just straight up bets. If you want to do that, that's always the fun way to go. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. They are an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Continue on here, Locked On SEC. And just one more segment to go here before we call the show, and just a few more tidbits we wanted to jump into. Over in South Carolina, Rocket Sanders did not shed a lot of light on playing for South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl. He declared for the NFL draft last week, but with the star running back not listed on the Gamecocks official depth chart for their New Year's Eve game in Orlando, it looks like he will not be suiting up one last time for South Carolina. 6 foot tall, 230 pounds. Obviously had a strong final season in Columbia, just battled injuries throughout his career at Arkansas. Battled injuries this year, played through a lot of those injuries, and was very productive for South Carolina. But according to Gamecock Central, he had not been practicing for the bowl game, and so you just kind of assumed that South Carolina was not going to have him. But the 9-3 Gamecocks will take on the 9-3 Illinois coming up in the Citrus Bowl on ABC in Orlando on New Year's. So we'll check that out. Over at Florida, Elijah Badger, he transferred into Florida this year and had a nice productive year for the Florida Gators. Played in 11 regular season games, made 8 starts, but he has announced that he is declared for the NFL draft. And so Florida already looking to replace him through the portal. They added UCLA wide receiver J. Michael Sturdivant and flipped 5-star wide receiver Dallas Wilson away from Oregon just recently. So best of luck to Elijah Badger at the next level. And also, Shamar James is going pro instead of going back to Gainesville for one more season. The junior linebacker writing a goodbye message to Florida fans on social media. 6'1", 229-pounder out of the state of Alabama, and thanked Gator Nation for welcoming him into the swamp. And he will be heading off to the NFL to start his career. Over at Kentucky, Vince Marrow, one of their top assistants, was reportedly leaning towards was interested in perhaps leaving for North Carolina. And according to Football Scoop on Thursday, they said, or all reports were that he was leaning towards staying on as an assistant at Kentucky. He's been at Kentucky since 2013 as both the associate head coach and tight ends coach, the longest tenured assistant under Mark Stoops, who began as the head coach in Lexington that same year. And 56-year-old Milroe, like we said, going to stick as Mark Stoops' right-hand man instead of to go join Bill Belichick's staff in Chapel Hill. But again, money is always an interesting part. His contract runs through 2026, and they pay him at least $1.3 million annually, according to Football Scoop. So Vince Milroe, like we said, sounding like he is staying put there in Kentucky. Over Texas, Colin Simmons, their big-time freshman edge rusher. He was named the Sean Alexander Freshman Football Player of the Year on Thursday. It's been handed out since 2013, goes to college football's most outstanding freshman each season. Previous winners include Trevor Lawrence, Will Anderson Jr., Brock Bowers, Drake May. He's been exceptional this year for the Longhorns. 39 tackles, 13 tackles for a loss, 8 sacks. Also has an interception and 3 forced fumbles, and he's just a freshman. Unbelievable season for Colin Simmons, and he's just scratching the surface on what he will be doing throughout his career. And lastly, over at Alabama, Jalen Milroe, very well thought of by NFL scouts. On Thursday, ESPN draft analyst Jordan Reed updated his rankings of the top 12 quarterback prospects eligible for this draft. And again, Milroe is not officially declared for the draft yet, but Jordan Reed's got him at number 3 overall. He's got him just behind Shedeur Sanders of Colorado and Cam Ward of Miami. But likes Jalen Milroe ahead of the likes of Carson Beck, Dylan Gabriel, Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart. So we'll see. A decision should be made here very soon, or announcement rather should be made here very soon by Jalen Milroe. He has until January 15th to decide whether or not to declare for the draft. So still some time. You have to wonder if maybe I'm playing in the bowl game against Michigan. Maybe I'll make an announcement following that. But nonetheless, Jalen Milroe sounds like, very highly thought of by some of the scouts. And, maybe he gets to the combine and starts to wow people with his athleticism, maybe even jumps up ahead of some of those other guys on that list. So certainly something to keep an eye on there. All right, there you guys have it. You are caught up on all things SEC. We will talk to you guys on Monday. We'll recap all the action from the weekend. And thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Hey, for your second listen, you can check out some of our other great SEC podcasts. Eric Kane with Locked On Vols, Luke Robertson, Locked On Bama. Some great other podcasts to check out as well. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Everybody have a great weekend. Be safe out there. We'll talk to you guys then.